Hi everyone, so today our top tip, we're going to talk about Veronica. Now Veronica is actually available the whole year round, and it comes in a huge range of shades of pinks, but also a lilac and say this dark purple. It's a brilliant flower because it's available all year round. You can use it in multiple items and it's very popular in wedding bouquets. Now one thing just to be a little bit aware about, it's not a great lasting flower out of water. So if you're using or including it in your wedding bouquet, I'd recommend to do it in hand-tied bouquets that can be left in water as long as possible and basically removed just in time for the bride to carry. It gives a lovely kind of like a line or a spike in your arrangement, you know, that way. Again, some people find it's not a great lasting flower in floral foam. But what people don't realise with floral foam is that you do have to keep it topped up. So even when you place your floral foam into your container, always make sure that there's an extra little bit of space around the floral foam. And what you should actually do is top that up. And people will say to me, how much will I top it up? And I always say, keep topping it up until it spills over the edges. In other words, you can't put enough water in. It's not possible to over soak it. It's a bit like placing flowers into a vase of water. Whether you have the water here, here or here, once there's no leaf under the water line, again, you can't actually overwater it. But back to our Veronica. If you're purchasing this wholesale, normally the minimum you can buy is 25 stems. So in front of me here on the table, I have 25 stems. Now, normally within that 25 stems, it's divided up into smaller little bunches of 5. Now maybe if you're buying from your local wholesaler, they may sell you a small single bunch of 5, but normally, most times when you're buying wholesale, you do have to buy the large amount. If you're purchasing from your local flower shop, it will be that little bit more expensive, but again, you can purchase it by the stem, and again, they may do a little deal with you if you're buying it in maybe slightly larger quantities to the normal retail customer. So with all flowers, remove the elastic bands. Sometimes an elastic band or the twine can be on the stem very tight, and that can restrict or delay the water getting up the stem. So that's why we always say remove the elastic bands. The next thing then is removing the foliage, and remove as much foliage as possible. So I like to use the stem stripper. Now we have the stem strippers available for sale on our website flowerschoolisland.com, and just click on the sundries for sale button. So you'll find that this is great to see just how easy it just cleans down your stem. Now for somebody who hasn't got a stem stripper, you can use your hand. But you can imagine after doing 25 stems of Veronica and then maybe 20 stems of roses and then your blooms and your chrysanthemums and so on, your hand will be, talk about green fingers, your hands will be in bits. So definitely worth investing in a stem stripper. And probably no problem, no hassle at all maybe investing in 2 of them, because it's a bit like the scissors, you know, the way they always seem to go missing and they get thrown out in the bin. Now you will find with your stem stripper, it's better to do each flower individually. Don't go and try, and if you miss a leaf you can pull it off with your finger, but don't try and do a couple of stems at the same time. Now when you have cleaned down your stems, have your vases prepared. And always kind of leave the fresh water till the last minute to top up. The fresher the water, the more oxygen that's in the water and the longer your flowers are going to last. Sometimes people fill their buckets of water up a couple of days in advance. Now in the winter time and certain flowers you may get away with that, but in the summertime you might find that in 12 hours or 24 hours your water is actually gone to room temperature, and that's no good for your flowers at all. So yes, have all your buckets and vases sterilised in advance. So again, if you've watched any of my tutorials, you'll know I'm a firm believer in sterilising all our buckets and vases with Domestos bleach. If you've missed any of them tutorials, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel. You'll find us under Kay's Flower School on YouTube. And I have lots of free tutorials all about conditioning different types of flowers and also the preparation of your buckets. So have your buckets and vases sterilised in advance. And then when you get your flower delivery, or just before you get your flower delivery, I normally like to fill my buckets and vases over the halfway mark with water. I definitely would say 30 centimetres of water anyway. I like to add flower food to the water, and especially for the first feed. So when your flowers have been delivered from Holland, in my case here, or even if you've collected them or have them delivered from your local supplier, a lot of the flowers come dry packed. That just means that they're not in water when they get delivered. So they're completely dehydrated, and you really need to kind of like tender love, you know, that way, looking after them, and basically, I often say to the students, a kick in the ass and bring them back to life again. So when people talk about a long drink, you know, that way, that's kind of what they mean, is give them a good drink before you actually use them. So your vase is filled with water, and I, as I said, like to put the flower food in. So just for that first drink, when we're hydrating the stems, I really feel it's beneficial if you have flower food in the water. That gives them flowers. It's a bit like, you know, that Veronica, you know, like it gives you that kick, that vitamin C, kick in the ass that you need to bring you back to life. And that's really what it's going to do to the flowers. Now, different people have different views on flower food. I find with flower food, it can encourage flowers to open. So when you have the likes of lilies, or maybe freesia, or iris, or whatever the flower, peonies, hydrangeas, if you have a flower and you want to get it open that little bit faster, I would definitely encourage you to add flower food to the water. But if you have a flower and you're trying to hold it back a little bit, maybe you have lilies in for a wedding and you don't want them to open so fast, or the weather is very warm, well then I would say to you, maybe hold back on the flower food. But for their very first drink, I definitely recommend adding flower food to the water. Flower food does lots, like not just encourages them to open. It also stops bacteria growing in the water. But with the likes of the Veronica, I would recommend changing the water every 2 to 3 days. Now again, you will hear people say every 3 to 5 days, every 5 to 7 days. It depends on the flowers and it depends on the flowers. But you will find with Veronica, it does like the water to be changed that little bit more regular. So every 3 days minimum. Now, when you go to change the water in 3 days' time, maybe don't add flower food to that batch of water. But as I said, the flower food will stop the bacteria growing, will stop the water kind of going smelly, stops the build-up of slime on the inside of your vases, and also it balances the pH value in your water. So it's going to do lots of other things. So water is organised in our vase, bucket is sterilised, and flower food is already added. You have your stems down and you've cleaned down off the leaf, as much leaf as possible, okay? But definitely make sure that there's no leaf below the water line. So assuming you're going to put 30 centimetres of water into your vase, make sure there's no leaf below the 30 centimetres. And then using a sharp scissors, and you can buy an Oasis Flower scissors on our website, flowerschoolireland.com, under floral sundries, you're going to take off at least an inch, so 2–2.5 centimetres off the end of your stems on a slant. So cut them like on a 45-degree angle. When you cut on a 45-degree angle, immediately then place them into your water. What you do is you open up a larger hole than if you had it cut straight across. So it's really, really important when they're having their first drink, the bigger the hole is at the end of the stem, the easier it is for your flower to drink up water. But when you're going to do flower arranging, it's also an advantage if you get into the habit of cutting on a slant. So when you're inserting that stem down into the floral foam, it's like it's on its ballerina toes and it just slides down into the floral foam. Even with my students when we're doing hand-tied bouquets and they're adding extra flowers, you know, in among their hand-tied bouquet, you will find when your stem is angled, it'll slide down. Where when you have a stem and you've cut straight across, so secondly there's a smaller hole, but also when you go to insert it into floral foam, it's shoving down into the floral foam instead of kind of gracefully going in. Or when you're adding that flower to a hand-tied bouquet, again you're plunging it in, you're shoving it in rather than it sliding down. So there's a couple of reasons for all these little tips and tricks that I give you. If you have any comments or any questions, feel free to comment below. If you do enjoy our YouTube and our Facebook social media top tip videos, make sure to give us a thumbs up. Share the love, you know, send us on them little emojis, the little hearts, but also we'd really appreciate it if you actually shared our videos. Again, it's a way of us building up analytics with Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn and also YouTube. So I hope you enjoyed it. My name is Janette and I'm from Kay's Flower School, and as I said, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Kay's Flower School.